Cheryl, thank you so much for this opportunity for speaking and getting together with us today. Would love to understand who is Cheryl Chan.
Thank you for the opportunity to be on this dialogue. Well, my name is Cheryl Chan. I'm actually the Group Chief Strategy and Sustainability Officer in ST Engineering. I'm also the President for New Ventures as of this year. I do have two jobs. The other job that I do is actually in the public sector. I'm a Member of Parliament and I represent the East Coast GRC. So in my growing years, I'm actually, I would say, an average student, but very curious in subjects related to STEM. So anything that's around science and mathematics interests me, which is eventually answers why I did not fulfill my own dream job of becoming a psychologist or a teacher. I actually took up engineering and went to university, Nanyang Technological University, to do material science. Back then it wasn't a full engineering faculty. It's called applied science. That's the bachelor that I've got, but it became a 4-year degree, and of course that's when I was asked by the Dean's List to go for a final year to take up my full engineering certification. And so that I graduated from materials engineering and have always been curious about science and engineering, and therefore I've always continued remaining in this field. To many people, it's actually quite a tough journey to be, whether it's for a female, particularly because engineering, it's relatively male dominated. It still is today, but we're seeing a nicer mix, right, in terms of graduates, female graduates coming out of every cohort. But I must say, my class was very small then. I only had 81 students in the cohort that I graduated from. And so you can imagine many of the classes and courses that we took were in the common engineering faculties, and that's where the foundations were laid. And finally, we did our specialization. So I did specialization in microelectronics, and that really explains how I actually went out to my very first job, which is with this company called Kulik & Sofer. Kulik & Sofer, it's the world-leading back-end semiconductor equipment manufacturer. And so that has really intrigued me, because one of the first things I did in my job, and I was actually blessed to be given the chance to go overseas and take up this stint. So fresh out of school, I think I was only in the company in Singapore for about 3 weeks or so. I was posted to the US. So I worked out of the Pennsylvania office, and that was when the whole journey of my engineering began. It was relatively exciting, I have to say, because you learn many things that for once I thought, actually you don't learn everything in school. There was as much that you get trained in the core curriculum, understanding the basics and the fundamentals of science and engineering, but a lot of things actually is about applying it when you get to the real workspace. And so I learned many new things from things around mechanical, electrical, electronics, system integration, software, and all this I learned right from the job, what they call OJT. And it was best for me to learn because I have good colleagues. I have to say, in many things in life, you never get prepared for it, but you learn as on the job, you take it as part of experience, but it's only enabled because you get very good teammates. I was very blessed to have those, and my co-workers, the colleagues I have, whether it's my subordinates over time as I grow to become a manager, or even those from other parallel engineering teams, they were the ones who made it possible for me to have that learning experience. And I thoroughly enjoyed every part of it. Of course, with all said, nothing it's like a walk in the park. There's always tough times when things you never understood, parts of engineering, which I was still figuring, how does that work? It's not that science is self-explanatory in everything. So you have to just do a lot of design of experiments. You have to be inquisitive, have that curious mind, and continue to pick information out from what is not within your job scope. I think to me, that's the biggest learning point I had, when I was a very young engineer moving into being in management, because not everything are placed out in the textbooks for you, and neither could you learn everything just from a single lesson. It is accumulation of all the different lessons that you have learned, and the fact that you're able to apply it directly or indirectly, that makes it very exciting in the job.
Women in particular tend to have this phenomenon of being, from what you said, you didn't know a lot. I mean, 3 weeks into the job, and then you moved there and you learned a lot on the job. Women in particular tend to have this mindset where if I don't know it, I'll not get into it.
Yeah.
I need to be perfect before I jump in. So, what would be your 3 lessons for women listening to you, professionals, getting into or anything? I mean, art, craft, sports, whatever.
Yeah.
That jump in before you prepare, and then you'll figure it out. I mean, what would you like to say?
I don't know whether that's a very female instinct or it's something that female, maybe some male also have these attributes as well, right? But I would say, if you ask me, someone who's early in their career, what would my advice be for them? I would say 3 things. First, be curious and go beyond the job scope that's defined for you. It's quite important, and maybe I'll just elaborate a little bit about it. Because being curious, you can do experiments, you can work on things, but people will always be hesitant. Should I go beyond what I've been assigned on my task? And I must say, this is what makes a clear difference for myself. I have bosses who are not micromanagers, which really works very well for me in terms of personality. But what is actually very good is the fact that I'm willing to explore beyond just what's being placed on my task sheet. And I think that is one thing which actually over time broadened my skill sets and helped me build the experience, which no one would actually tell me, these are the to-do list. And therefore, I would really encourage anyone who's starting up to not just be focused on what's been assigned for them. Once you've done that work itself, try and go beyond it. Be inquisitive and continue asking questions. Why are certain things not done in a different way? Especially when the environment becomes very dynamic today, it only helps you. There's no downside to it. By learning more and at some point being to turn back and say, actually, this has been something useful. I never knew it and I can connect the dots today. And so that's why I said be curious and go beyond your work scope. The second thing is I would encourage anyone who's willing to take that plunge to go for an international experience. I said I've been blessed. Well, maybe blessed is a way to look at it, right? That blessings comes also because I actually seek for it. When I was looking for my first job, many people would say, send as many resumes as possible, make sure you get called for interviews. Well, I was a little different. I only sent 20. In fact, I knew very well because I was very particular about what I looked for. There were 3 things I looked for. First, I need to have a company that is more international because I hoped to at least be given that chance for an international experience once. Second, so in a way, it's a bit of an MNC. But second, it has to be an engineering field where I think would be the next growing trend. And back at my time, it was really semiconductor. So it was about microelectronics, which was what I specialized in. The third was, this is a little hard to say because you never know who's going to interview you, and probably quite a lot of interviewers will be there at the table. But I I was given 4 job offers. I kind of decided at the last one and said, whom will I sign with? We will be the direct line manager that I'll be working with. And so I get to speak with both line managers, right? The one who was hiring me and the one who will become my manager when I was posted overseas. And therefore, that's what made me decide, and I joined Kulik and Silver. So I would encourage anyone, because all the international experience that I've had all this while, not just in the US, I've worked in Taiwan, in China, and also in large part of North Asia in particular, and in Southeast Asia because of semiconductor customer. It has really broadened my perspective on one, culture, and the other aspect of it is how do you really work and hold your grounds even as a female participant. Over time, I no longer see myself just being a female, but actually someone who's very much embedded in the whole ecosystem. And therefore, I never think twice to sit, should I do this work? Should I not, just because I'm a female? And therefore, that's my third piece of advice. It's to, over time, actually embed yourself into the workplace and no longer keep thinking, am I a female or am I a male in this job role? Because I do not believe that everyone needs to have 100% information before you can take the first leap of faith. I always believe in 80-20 rule. You need to make informed decisions, but you need not have all the information before you move ahead. In today's very dynamic world, it's probably impossible for you to know everything. If you know everything, probably Gen AI will be a few steps ahead of you. So it is not impossible to get to that point, but you should actually attempt. Not giving yourself that chance and opportunity to attempt anything that's new, I will say it's actually a disservice to any individual. So if today you're starting out in your career, just go for it, because you never know what your skill sets will bring to you. And the more important thing, it's not just about yourself, it's the immediate working team that makes it possible for you.
What would you tell your 20-year-old self today?
Well, if I look back, I must say I have no regrets. I did not regret a single path or decision that I've made. I would only say at times when I met with trouble or there were very strong headwinds, I only learned good lessons. And every lessons continue to build my own character. It helps me develop at work. And it actually makes me as a stronger individual and in fact more empathetic. Because the problems that I faced when I was younger makes me actually learn to be a better manager. I would not ask of some things which I felt I actually encountered that same problem when I was much younger and without the whole breadth of experience or even the depth of experience. And therefore, I will not be too demanding when it comes to what I ask of others. Of course, there's always expectations and there's always a basic requirement of what they should meet their standards to. But I would like to say I rather let individuals learn and explore, because it's more important the process and the journey that they go through. And when they become capable individuals and they build more abilities, then it makes it even better for them being a part of my team. So I wouldn't impose what I have on myself to that individual. But if I look back, if you ask me, will I change anything? I would say no, except for one thing. I would apportion more time for myself to have learning experiences. Well, I already have learned a lot. I felt that now with the digital space, I still wouldn't claim that I've learned sufficiently. And with the very busy workload that I have today, everything becomes compressed. I learn things, right? When you talk about a 15-minute module, I wish it finishes in 5 minutes. So I'm so, multitasking that sometimes I feel it's not healthy, because I probably don't sit down enough to have time to think. Well, I still do. I need to do it for the purpose of my work and to back strategies and everything. I wish there was more. That's what I would wish for.
Tell us something about the mentors that you have seen for yourself along the journey and the impact that it has created for you.
Yeah, so I do have two mentors whom I deeply admire, and I still stay very close touch with them. They're always curious about how I've developed, while never, coming and come across and say, I want to know what you're doing, how should I help? Because that relationship that we're developed into is more a friendship. The first one was really, he's currently the CTO of the company, my first in Kulik and Sofa. He's someone who is actually so giving and who continue to impart knowledge in a very different way, not in a technical depth. He always encourages me to learn from other people. If you don't know, just go out and seek for that knowledge. If there's something you would like to do, just come and ask. And if it is within the means of the company or of himself, he will try to give it. And therefore, he's not someone where I see as though there is a hierarchy. I had always seen him as a partner and someone who actually encourages me to take steps, which I'm unclear of. Don't know whether I still remember it. I was like, should I actually be taking the Master of Engineering or should I do an MBA? And his advice, so of course he went with all his stories and everything else. Eventually what I got out of it was actually just, so he provides advice, but never to tell you what you should be doing. Because his advice was so broad-based, in the end I still have to figure actually what works best for myself. I eventually decided to do my MBA. Well, the reason being this, as I have wanted to continue to be in engineering, but I never really wanted to become that research scientist. So the point is, you can still pick up all the skill sets while you're doing your work. And you can still take partial courses to, if you really want to go and learn very in-depth on a particular area, you can still do that, not a problem. But because I was so curious at that point of time, in very young when I was a manager, about what else actually enables a company to function, what differentiates a successful company from the others. And therefore, I decided an MBA, because that's where you learn about marketing, about sales and business development, about communications, every other aspects. That's not something I'll get to do in my engineering function. And hence, I decided to do my MBA. It was a nice experience because my MBA was one where I get to finally, other classmates who were not from engineering. They were from marketing, business development, you have sales. Even back then, there were people who were using tools like, what's commonplace today for us to do all these podcasts and things. I also met someone in HR who actually uses that to do it. So I was so intrigued, right? And back then, it was like there's so many sparks in life, and a lot of knowledge that you constantly pick up because you learn from other people. I have to say, so that's really what he gave me as my first mentor. Really, the first mentor out of school, and someone who's been very endearing and embracing in my own abilities and helping me develop. The second mentor was the one who encouraged me to join public service. So he was none other than my predecessor, who was a former member of parliament as well, Mr. Raymond Lim. I was actually an active volunteer for 10 years before Mr. Raymond Lim actually posed the question and said, would you like to come into politics? Well, that was a very, very difficult decision for me, I must say. I discussed that actually with my parents, and eventually they supported and said, well, you're a grown up. If you believe this is for the good, not just for yourself, but for the people, then you should just take the plunge and go ahead. So in my life, I really has taken quite a few leap of faith, I must say. So by nature, I'm an introvert and actually quite a reserved person. I don't think that getting into politics has changed me in that sense. But what was different is I do enjoy being around people, and the interaction actually with my own residents has been happy and enjoyable every step of the way. The things that they tell you about, some things that's very personable in their lives, and you wouldn't expect people to be sharing every aspects of it, but they do. And I think that's really because they trust an individual and they feel comfortable being around you, and that's why they decided to share all this. And I must say, all these experiences has been something I didn't quite expect when I got into politics, but they brought me a lot of joy. And it's that whole passion and the willingness to service others which made it possible.
How have you built these relationships, and how do you maintain these relationships within the realms of your personality, what you like to do, and how you like to engage with people?
I have to say that has to do with maybe two things. One, being myself, being authentic. That has always been my style, And I think when it's natural and it's you, people tend to want to associate and be trusting, right? Because I think relationships are built upon trust. And it takes years to build this relationship and trust. But the other aspect of it is, I think it's less of me, but actually of the network that I have. My friends, professionals that I've stayed in touch with, they understand how busy my work has been. Busy from the part, not because I have no time to engage them, but partly because when I was in my starting of my career, I've always been traveling. I lived overseas and all that. Even if you want to engage with your friends, back then, was just the starting point of the internet boom. We didn't have so many gadgets and things and so many apps, right, that helps you stay in touch. You don't have a WhatsApp that you can call. It's really expensive to do calls back then. Long distance calls was just not tenable. I always take effort to be with people. When I'm back in Singapore, when I'm traveling a particular country, if I know someone is still residing in that particular country, I'll take effort to sound them out ahead of time and said, would you want a quick catch up? Even if it's just for coffee, right? It's just to see how people have been going and what they are busy with in life. Quite frankly, I think the best thing that came out of all this relationship, apart from it being a two-way process, is the fact that you start having connections with people that become an extension of it. Because, well, sometimes I said it's not easy for me to get in and straight away network with people naturally. But what was actually pleasant is when people find there's a certain expertise that you have, because of the value that you want to bring to others, they begin to say, actually, I want to connect you with someone else. And that's how those connections naturally form itself over time. And I've continued to keep up with it. Now it's much easier because of WhatsApp. You can just text people and say, oh, what's going on? You can have a quick virtual call with them as well. So tools and apps makes it even much more fundamental that it's possible for you to continue engaging others, and therefore, that has already taken a life of its own now.
What have been the three major milestones in your career?
I think my major milestones in my career have been the ones that I took the leap of faith each time. The first one, of course, the first company. I have to say, I'm truly blessed. Maybe, and then I would say 3.5 milestones, if I may. The first one is definitely the first company, Kulik and Sofa, because, like I said, made the decision because of the hiring manager, and also because, wow, it's the first job that will send me overseas. So that's the first one that I had. The second one was actually getting into my second company, which was Linda. I have no background in gas. While I know engineering, I have no industrial gas background. I also wonder sometimes why I wrote in and applied for the job in the company. But my hiring manager then, actually both ways, took a leap of faith in me and said, well, given your ability, you can learn this in no time. Which was true enough. It was quite a challenge in the first 2 months of me trying to figure everything about gases, because the only gas I know were the gases in the air that we breathe. So I decided, technically, I'm not inclined in it, but I can learn all the ropes in it. And it really took me, very quickly to jump into it and become sort of that thought leader for our clients as well, because I was in marketing and business development. Then the third leap of faith was actually for me to move into public service. As I said earlier, that journey of how I got into it, it was never something that I ever thought I would take it as a job. I really never considered that. Because when I volunteered, it was purely out of me enjoying the volunteers, the fellow volunteers I have, and how, helping people actually could make a real difference in people's life. That's something I don't get in the professional work. But I clearly see it, and it helps not just one individual, but families. So that was the third one. And I said, why 3.5? Because the next one that made me kind of change my mind and decided, well, I was very happy in my job in Linda, but not that I looked out, but was being headhunted for, was actually the job in ST engineering. And that was it happened because, firstly, why was it difficult? Because it happened during the thick of pandemic. So first and foremost, when you came into a company, and actually there was no colleagues around. There was literally no one when I came to office. But they tried to make it easy for me in Eastern. And the reason, actually, some people have asked, you've worked in MNCs all your life, why did you want to come to a homegrown company? It was also because of the pandemic. I felt that, when you saw how supply chains got disrupted, abilities of company being able to survive, and what will clearly make a difference is when you can actually help out a lot of homegrown companies. ST Engineering is one unique company, very diversified in its business portfolio, but nonetheless, they hire a lot of Singaporeans. And it is a company that's already growing its global footprint. I felt that my international exposure, the experiences I had in MNCs, would just actually come in at a point when I can truly value add to them. And that was the real reason why I joined ST Engineering. The attributes that enabled me to be who I am today I don't know if there are three, there must be more than that. But maybe the ones that I think are critical. I wouldn't call them success because I'm still trying to groom these skills, right? As I meet different situations, different challenges along the way. First, being passionate. You know, when I'm passionate about a topic like sustainability, I truly try to find ways to make myself learn and become a more knowledgeable individual. And I find ways to enable others to be a part of this journey with me. And I feel that many things that you do, whether it's in the private or the public service, if you don't have that passion, it is very, very difficult to persevere the journey. And probably even harder to inspire others to be part of that journey with you. So I would say passion is the first one. Second, it's actually perseverance. But if you think of it in a negative way, you can say it's being stubborn, which some people have told me before. I've got different line managers along with. It's like, why must you try to solve that problem? And for me, sometimes it's actually just to address my own curiosity. But that perseverance have seen me through really big breaking barriers in some ways, but also bringing new horizons actually to other people. That's how would I at least from my perspective, that's how I see it. But when I used to get all this 360 feedback from colleagues, well, it's all anonymous. It's quite telling what they tell me, right? I think since I was a young engineer all the way until I come into management, I still get the same feedback. Sometimes they say, you should stop being so hard to yourself. Maybe that's just me, okay? But I felt there's no loss. It's just taking more of my time. But yeah, when I earlier said why I started doing a lot of things around 80-20 rule is really because of that. It's not trying to be that perfectionist because I felt there's no need to. There's no perfect state. Things continuously evolve because you can't manage the macro situation or the macro factors. But what you can do is try to do the current job very well and make sure people get to benefit from it. I feel when you are able to do that and you can persevere through it, then you truly value add to other people as well, not just to yourself. Another aspect of it is learning to enjoy life. Sometimes I say this easily and tell people you must learn about self-care. You have to take care of yourself before you can take care of others. But I fairly often, my mentors will say, you don't do enough for yourself. Yes, sometimes I admit that's true as well. But I think learning and enjoying processes is actually one of the best gifts anyone can give to yourself. And that's also what I felt as I grow older. Well, people always say you're still not that old, but I really said as I grow older and I start managing more senior individuals, I feel that what I can give to them is by telling them, learning to enjoy the process, opening up to other people, and taking them on board. I think that is one thing which makes it possible in even very tough situations. Because you're no longer just giving guidance, nor dispensing advice. People actually look to you to inspire them to take even harder journeys or, breaking barriers and challenging themselves. Because you can never quite do the work for them. You can only continue to inspire them. And that's really over time what I look to in giving to others, which is trying to become a mentor. I take up more mentees over the years. And like I said, I always advise a mentee, you can look up to role models, but never try to become them. Because no two individuals in this world are identical, not even twins. And therefore, what you have to do is just continue honing your own skill sets and make the best out of it.